Can I get this disk drive to work in this Xbox Series X Digital Edition? That's what we're about to find out. This video is sponsored by Eureka and their E20 Plus vacuum. More on them in a minute. So the Xbox is already partially apart from my last video, and in this video we'll also reinstall the clamp that I forgot to put in. So I need to get this torn down to this top board right here because that's where the connections for the disk drive are. So I just got a few screws in here to get down to that. Now this plate, we will have to install this plate instead of this one. Let's just make sure that's gonna fit on here. I kind of assumed it would, but also you never know. Yeah, perfect fit. Okay, good so far. Now this is the board we need to remove. These are the connections right down here that we need to get to. So I am going to remove this board. That'll just make it easier to do any of the soldering that we need to do. Now we'll remove the power supply as well. All right, then we'll remove this plate and this board and we should be ready to go. And actually, before I forget, I need to take this thing the rest of the way apart so I can install that clamp so I don't forget that again, which means we need to take that off and this metal plate off. And now we can put the clamp on. All right, and now with the clamp on, we can get to what we're here for today. There we go. Now we can set this aside, get down to this board. So now, in order to attempt to get the disk drive working on this board, we obviously need to place these connectors on this board, but we have all of these little components right here, some over here, a few down here. We have to swap all of those over to here. So the plan is to remove this connector, and then we'll swap all of these components onto this board, and then we will place the connectors. I want to place the components on here before we place the connectors because the connectors are made of plastic and they're much more likely to melt when we're placing these other components. So we'll do that part last. Let's start by removing these big connectors, then we'll start swapping these components onto this board. So to remove these connectors, I'm going to leave the wires and connectors attached to the connector on the board, hopefully to soak up some of the heat to reduce the chance of the connector that attaches to the board melting. Then I'm going to bring my hot air onto the bottom of the board and heat it up from the bottom, and then as the solder melts, I will wiggle the connector off from the top, and that should result in the connectors coming off of the board without being damaged. There we go, we got one. This connector is taking a while. There we go. Tore a trace off, that should be fine. Don't like doing it, but it's not a big deal in this case. Okay, and here we are all set up under the microscope. Basically, all of these little solder pads that aren't populated need to be populated, and that's gonna be a lot of little components, so sit back and relax and watch me get some soldering done. Okay, so we've got everything installed, all the little components, this little chip right here. This on the other board was missing, so I didn't install it there, obviously. Got all these little guys installed, this line installed, and this looks like a fuse that's installed. So everything here is installed correctly. Everything looks good. Now let's get these connectors on. And then after that, I think it's about ready to put this thing back together and test it. I thought we had everything. I just flipped it over and I just placed this chip here. We've got several components around here that we need to place on this board, so that's what we'll be doing next. And this should be the last one. All right, double check the boards. That all looks good.
Here at Tronics Fix, Steve keeps me pretty busy. But with 3 cats, 2 children, 1 spouse, 1 me, all living in one house, there are so many chores that constantly need to be taken care of at home. But I was recently able to check off one thing from my list: floor care. The Eureka E20 Plus has been a game changer for me. All I need to regularly do is unlock it, remove it from the dock, and empty it. Bags are a thing of the past. Who wants to be fiddling with those things and spend up to $70 a year replacing them? I personally prefer this much more eco-friendly method. Well, that alone is awesome, but how does it clean? With 8,000 PA suction on the carpet, it does a great job lifting dirt and even dealing with those pesky clumps of cat hair. One thing Eureka has really nailed is a roller brush designed not to get tangled up with hair up to 10 centimeters in length. I have a combination of hard floors and carpet with a large rug under my table. I was honestly skeptical at how the E20 would handle all the transitions, but it does it like a champ. It automatically senses when changing from hard floor to carpet and lifts the mop in to prevent the carpet from getting saturated. I was also curious how it would do with all the chair legs and table legs, but Loki and I are both sitting here in amazement at the job the sensors do of gently working around and getting every surface area covered. Living with cats and kids means it's near impossible to keep random things from being on the floor when it's cleaning time. No problem. The E20's use of AI is stellar at recognizing an obstacle and avoiding it. My favorite feature though is the app, with so many options to play around with for scheduling, spot cleaning, zone setup, and so much more. So if, like me, you have a list of chores a mile long, you might want to think about giving the E20 a try. You can find them easily on Amazon just by searching Eureka E20 Plus, and that will take you right where you want to go to find that and other floor cleaning solutions from Eureka.
So as we prep to install this connector, we need to clear this hole and this hole. Those are the mounting pins that are on the connector. So I'm going to use my hot air to heat those holes up. Then I'm going to use a solder sucker to suck the solder right out of them. Looking for the solder to liquefy. Once I see that happening, then I'll know we're ready to suck it out of there. See, the pads are liquefying. This will probably take a little longer. Oh, no, we're liquid. All right, and here we go. Okay, I'm going to move this a little bit, hopefully make it so I can get that out of there. There we go. All right, and now the next one. Okay, it is liquid. And there we go. So with that done, the next thing we need to do is prep this connector. So I'm going to flux all these pins up. They've got a bunch of solder on them, which isn't a big deal, but we want to clean that off so it'll sit nice and flush on the board. Then we can solder it onto the board. So I got the flux on there, and now I'm just going to use my large iron, come through and melt these. That'll make the solder, I'm going to remove a bunch of solder, and then the solder that is there will sit nice and flat. So I am touching my iron to it and then periodically cleaning off my iron. That will clear off the excess solder. These mounting pins look pretty good. I think we'll be okay there. All right, and now we can see if this sits down on the board. And it sits down there perfectly. All right. So the first thing I'm going to do is get these mounting pins soldered on, and then we'll solder on all the little, the other little pins. So I'm going to add a bunch of flux into the hole, then get a bunch of solder onto my iron, and then go in just like that. Okay, there's one. And the other one. Now we can solder the small pins on the top side of the board. So we'll need to add a bunch of flux. All right, those look good. Now let's move on and do this connector. And first we'll clean up the connector just like on the other one. This is the pad we ripped off. Okay, there we go. Now the nice thing is that we can tell how to align it because there's one pin missing right here. And On the connector, there's one pin missing right there. So we know that it goes just like this. And there we go. Okay, that's a pretty good start. Okay, now we can solder these other ones down. Those are looking good. Now we just need, I'm gonna add a little more solder. There we go, those all look great. Now we just have to do the other side and we'll be all done. So again, we'll add some flux. Now we'll solder the pins down. And there we go. So this board is fully populated. After all that work, do you think it's gonna work? Let's get it installed and find out. I'm just hoping I didn't miss anything. Like I looked over these components multiple times to make sure that everything was there, but you never know. Sometimes there's circuits that go places you don't expect, so there is a possibility that I missed something. I'm pretty sure I got it all though. So I'm just gonna put this thing back together. I'm not gonna put it all the way into the case, but we'll get it together enough so we can test everything, because we don't need to get it all the way into the case. And plus the case is missing a hole for the disk drive anyway. Okay, and all of this stuff is out of the way. I wasn't sure whether this was all the same, but it looks like that bracket's exactly the same, so no worries there. The cables need to go through this hole right here, and then that fits on there just like that. Just wanted to double check and make sure this is very similar or the same as this piece. I wanted to make sure this wasn't, you know, down hitting on something that this one didn't, but these are molded like basically exactly the same. There's just a cutout here on this one, as you can see. Other than that, they are exactly the same. So that's the thing I wanted to check there. So for our purposes, for testing, I'm just gonna set the disk drive on top here, just like this. There we go. And that can just stay just like that. And we'll put this board on here. We shouldn't need any of this stuff, but just on the off chance that any of it matters or makes a difference, I want to make sure it all plugs in too. Okay, that's there. Now the other thing we have to do is plug in a power cable that has the eject button on it. So I have one of those right here. We need to make sure it plugs in on the board. So this is normally in the front of the console like this. So then this cable folds around and plugs in right here. Okay, that feels good. Okay, good so far. I'm gonna put a paper towel under it just to make sure nothing shorts out. I don't expect it to, but you never know. Okay, I think we're ready to power this thing on and see if it'll take a disk. Okay, HDMI is plugged in. Let's see what happens when we plug the power cable in. Hopefully nothing smokes. Okay, good so far. Now, this is the eject button, and it should beep if there's power to the disk drive. Ah, it doesn't beep at all. Okay, let's see if we even get power to the console. We don't. Did I not plug something in? Maybe this is different. Okay, let's try the power button that came with this console. Okay, and just looking at these connectors, it looks like right in here is these look like the pins that probably send power over to the power button. And over here, I'm guessing it's these ones right over here. So I think that's pretty different in this new console. So let's plug this one in. Obviously, we're not going to have an eject button, but we should at least be able to see if the disk drive has power or not. So plug this in next, plugging in the console. Good. Let's see if we can power it on with a disk. Oh, we cannot. This is not going well. All right, let's see if it'll power on. No, that's not good. I hope I didn't just ruin my brand new Xbox. But I mean, that's what we're here for, right? Is these experiment videos. It is just not. It's really strange that that the whole console wouldn't even power on. Let's try plugging the fan in. Make sure there's no fail-safe there. I have had a PS5 that didn't work when the fan was unplugged. Okay, fan is plugged in. All right, now let's see what happens. Nope. Okay, so let's try unplugging the disk drive and see if just having a disk drive in here is what's causing this. Okay, disk drive is unplugged and removed. Now let's see what happens. Nope. Wow. I also hear a little bit of like a buzzing, high-pitched, like whining noise. Not really a buzzing. Let's get this cover off and inspect the board and see if we can see what might be going on here. All right, so I just want to verify that there is power somewhere near the disk drive. So this is a power plane right here. It looks like we've got almost 12 volts there. We don't have 12 volts on this plane. So we don't have 12 volts on any of these chips. Let's check the fuse. Nope, nothing there. Nothing there. Nothing there. Oh, here we go. Okay, so this is the 12 volt plane right here. 12 volts there. 12 volts there. So we got 12 volts coming into this chip. I'm guessing maybe this chip sends 12 volts to the disk drive. I mean, it probably does. Let's check over here. And no voltage going into this connector right here. So I'm guessing this chip is what's supposed to be sending voltage, and it is not. Obviously, something needs to tell it to send voltage, which is also not happening. But it is strange that just having this circuitry here is making the entire console not power on. So even though all of this circuitry is basically here, even adding the components just won't make this work. It is interesting that on the PS5 digital, I put a disk drive in that one and the disk drive at least got power, but this, not only does it not get power, it also won't even power the console on. So now I have to see if I can fix my Xbox that I apparently broke by adding components. I think the first thing I'm gonna do is just remove this chip right here. And then I might also remove this fuse over here, although that probably is fine. Probably this chip is what's causing it, I'm guessing. So I'm gonna try removing that first, and then we'll see if it'll work after that. I also have to try not to melt these components right here, these connectors. They are plastic, so let's put a little bit of Kapton tape around them. Probably won't do much, but it might help. I'm gonna aim my hot air away from these connectors. Should help a little bit. There we go. Now with that removed, let's see if it'll start up. We do not. Okay, what I'm gonna do next is remove these two components right here and then try and power it up. If that doesn't work, I'll remove the components that I installed on the back and then we'll try and power it up. Let's try it again. Nope. Okay. Let's remove those components from the back side and then we'll try it again. So I've got that removed. I'm gonna try and power it up again, and if it doesn't work, then I'm just gonna mass remove all the components I installed, and we'll see if I just ruined this Xbox or not. Okay, I have the power supply plugged in and plugged into power. Now let's see what happens when we press the power button. Nothing. Okay, I think I have to admit total and complete defeat. I'm gonna remove all the stuff that I placed on this board and hopefully it'll work after that. Okay, here we go. I got almost all those components removed. Let's see what happens. Do we have power? Yes. Okay, I actually don't want it to start up though. I want to get this all plugged in and get it back in the case, and then we'll actually try and start it up on the TV and make sure that it fully works. Okay, it's almost all back together. Enough to test anyway. Let's make sure power's on and see what happens on the screen. Power, good. I don't hear the fan. Oh, here comes the fan. Oh, here we go. But do we get, there we go. This is actually the first time I've started this Xbox up. I've disassembled it twice, ran experiments on it, and now I'm actually gonna start it up and get it set up. I'm pretty surprised that after installing those components, the disk drive didn't even have power, and even more surprised the entire console didn't have power. But if you wanna see a similar video I made with the PlayStation 5 digital, I'll put a link for that up on your screen now so you can come hang out with me over there and see what happened when I try to install a disk drive into the PlayStation 5 digital. If you're interested in the Eureka E20 Plus vacuum, you can do a search on Amazon, or you can go to the link in the description and that will take you right to it. Thanks so much for watching today, and I hope you have a good one.